seventh item, which is the local journey strategy, and Mick's going to deliver a presentation about the strategy for us. Before we get into the accounts. Mick, over to you.
As you'll probably appreciate, this is the first of its kind for the city region, and I think most of you will agree it is a long overdue strategy. It's actually a guide to the development of services and infrastructure which support short trips across the city region. It's a missing link in our series of transport strategies. So we have a strategy for bus, we have one for rail, ferries, freight logistics, but we don't have one for local journeys. So this is going to be the piece of the jigsaw that's missing. It'll help us deliver on the national government objectives for cycling and walking in particular, and if you'll excuse the fund, it's our first step in the journey to provide a more strategic and consistent approach to cycling and walking. So why do we actually need this strategy? As you'll appreciate, over recent years, the way we get our funding from government has changed quite considerably. The integrated transport block would have normally funded all these types of measures, but unfortunately that has now been reduced probably in the region of 50 to 60% of what it was. And what's happened is the money now made available from government is done through a bidding process. Now the city region has been very successful in actually achieving funding through this process, and in that regard I would like to give thanks to the LTP policy unit in Merseytravel for the work they've done in doing that, because they've helped districts considerably to achieve what we have. What we have found in the bidding process is that the lack of a consistent strategy to cycling and walking has hindered us on occasion. The DfT have said on more than one occasion that if we'd have had a strategy, it might well have helped us in our other bids that were unsuccessful. Also, as you appreciate, the combined authority now through the devolution agreement, we have to prove that we're working more effectively and more efficiently, and we have to do that by showing that we can work together better in partnership, that we can do things such as joining contracts and driving prices down in what we do. Your officers that sit on the Transport Advisory Group acknowledged in 2016 that there was a long-standing requirement, because of the reasons I've just outlined, for a strategic approach to smarter choices. These are basically those modes of travel that are more sustainable, more healthy, they help us to solve problems of congestion and pollution and so on. But the funding process, through the funding process, we recognised that we all had challenges in terms of capacity, the level of skills that we had to deliver these bids and so on and so forth, and that we needed to respond to that. So again, this strategy hopefully will help us to do that by developing a more central, coordinated approach to what we do. We also want to focus more on an integrated approach, so that cycling and walking are integrated into all the strategies I mentioned earlier. So why is there a need for change? So you see from those figures there, 2/3 of all the journeys in the city region under 5 kilometres are made by car. I'm sure you'll agree really that that is not acceptable and that we need to do something about that. So as I said, walking and cycling needs to be integrated. We need to cut across the other combined authority themes, including planning and housing, employment and skills, and economic development and regeneration. We want to make sure that what we do supports better air quality, provides health benefits and improves the quality of life for our residents. We know that it can help support employment growth by providing reduced transport costs and improved access to opportunities by joining what we do together. At the moment, we have disjointed delivery arrangements. Whilst we do get the integrated transport block, what that tends to do is make individual districts deliver individual schemes without any real Liverpool City region-wide benefits. We do have 1 or 2 schemes through the STEP programme, for example, where we are working cross-boundary, but we need to improve on that form of delivery. We did commission an independent approach to data gathering so that we could get a more holistic approach to what we do, and to make sure that it wasn't going to be led particularly by one district or by Merseytravel itself, well. Tiger in support of what has happened, and in that regard there have been a series of strategic level meetings with your representatives on time, as well as your officers who are responsible for actually delivering these schemes on the ground. There are clear links to our growth strategy, our Building for the Future growth strategy, and the action principles that we now set out in the local journey strategy are based on the principles of productivity, people and places. As you'll see from the very first page of the strategy, we've already got the Merseytravel's endorsement to the strategy itself, which is really good news. It's the first step forward for us. In his manifesto, as you recall, he does give the pledge to deliver a strategy to make sustainable and healthy forms of transport safer and more attractive to all. He wants to focus on placemaking, so that he wants to make trips around the city centres, the town centres and so on easier, healthier and more accessible for everybody. He wants a shared vision, and this is the important thing for us all. He wants a shared vision where we work together, not in isolation. We do feel that if we work together we can achieve more, and I think the Merseytravel recognises that as well. In terms of how we're actually going to deliver what is set out in the strategy, a delivery model and implementation plan will be developed once you, as the Transport Committee and the Combined Authority, hopefully approve the strategy. We felt at this stage there's no point in actually producing a really detailed, costed implementation plan. That's what the strategy itself is agreed. It will be a data-led approach to what we do. It will be a centralised commissioning approach, hopefully. Now, this may require some investment and some rethinking of the way we deliver things. Some members will be aware from the KRN presentation that I did outline that if we are to work together more effectively, we are going to have to rethink how we deliver things. This will involve bringing staff together from across the city region, working jointly on projects, or allowing one or more districts to work together as taking the lead on things. What we do will be outcome-based, so it won't simply be a matter of providing, say, a 100-metre length of cycle lane that starts sort of nowhere and finishes nowhere. We often do get criticised for that, so we want to avoid that in the future. So it will be outcome-based. We will be looking at the success of this in terms of how many more people use what we provide. Hopefully we'll work with the likes of the health authorities to see what their view is on what these increased cycling and walking levels are doing in terms of the impact on health budgets and so on. So that brings in all these other things that we need to do. The implementation plan, as I said earlier, will be based on the principles set out in the growth strategy. We will do a gap analysis where we'll map out our current or planned activity and basically see whatever funding for sources are available that we can access and go for those. Because essentially, we want to be as competitive as anybody. We will be looking for a project lead, and I'll come to that later on. There will be a strategic approach for bidding. We won't, again, be just doing that in isolation, as we feel our chances are going to be greater if we work together. The TAG and the Chief Executives have agreed a principle and model as to how we can deliver cycling and walking. We basically need to find a home for cycling and walking. It's always been on the fringes of what we do, and we need to find a home for it so people recognise where it sits. What we're proposing to you as members now is a delivery structure where we think how we feel we can do that. We're suggesting that it sits within the Directorate of Integrated Transport within Merseytravel. It provides a central point of reference so that we can interface with the DFT. As I said earlier, one of the weaknesses that the DFT think we've got is that there's no go-to person for cycling and walking. If we agree this model, there will be, and that is, will be a real positive in the eyes of the DFT. And as you can see from those other service areas, it will provide an integrated interface so that we can have seamless journeys as opposed to separate things not linked up at all. So our development approach, as I said earlier, we are going to have to rethink the way we do things. We're looking at possibly centralised revenue commission on behalf of TAG. Centralised coordination, I mean, we have that to a certain degree already in terms of the STEP and LSTF programmes. We will be looking at working on strategic capital scheme development. Now, essentially what that means is rather than districts doing things in isolation, we will be looking at bringing everything together for the benefit of the city region, as opposed to separate isolated schemes that perhaps whilst they're good to some degree locally, they don't really achieve too much in terms of the city region. It will strategically sit alongside the other modes that are already within the Integrated Transport Directorate. And what we're suggesting is that the project team be set up eventually that will be operating on hard tag. So there's an awful lot in that document. If you've got any questions, we do feel it's an important strategy that needs to be approved, and it will help us to move forward, particularly in terms of delivering cycling and walking across the city region. And in that regard, Chair, I would ask the committee to approve the recommendation.
Thanks for that, mate. Already got a show of hands from Gordon, and then Tom and Jed and others. Natalie.
Thank you very much. You know, I wouldn't miss this opportunity to mention green credentials that are got regarding to the air quality. So, first of all, I'd like to say to the Metro Mayor, it's good to see that he's taking a priority to moving that. And I think it's also about being a smart city as well, and how we connect all the different modes of transport is multimodal, and walking, cycling, and those things should be absolutely connected to that. So I hope when air quality is looked at, what we do with that is not just the emissions from some of the vehicles that are in PM10s, real concern about the small particulates, the 2.5 and the micro ones. I think we've just really got to green up this city before we get the example of the city being chosen to transport vehicles alternating days on their registration level possible. So I welcome this time of the comments by the Metro Mayor. Thank you for the very good presentation.
Tom.
Thanks, Chair. I agree this is a very important strategy which identifies a very serious problem, namely that 2/3 of short journeys are made by cars. But I do think it doesn't go far enough to really address the problem of the strategy as it stands. I had a long list of things that I wanted to see in the strategy. Many of them are addressed in the strategy, but by no means all of them. There were no real sort of strong targets in the strategy, but I presume that's all to come in the implementation plan that's going to follow. There's just a few questions I wanted to raise about the strategy. So the word economic growth pops up a lot. It's all about supporting economic growth within the region. What if it becomes clear there's a contradiction between promoting economic growth and creating a sustainable transport network? What would win out in that situation? What is the report really trying to achieve? I wonder if there's also a contradiction between the stated aim of prioritising sustainable forms of transport and the Metro Mayor's stated aim of reducing the cost of commuting by cars by reducing tunnel fees. I like the idea of the last mile as a concept. I wonder if that could be applied to logistics as well, with edge of town areas where goods could be loaded into warehouses and then delivered in smaller vehicles to reduce the amount of HGVs coming into the city. One important omission, in my opinion, is that there's nothing about speed reduction in the report, which is a big kind of barrier to cycling. This region's got quite alarming figures for people getting killed and seriously injured on their bikes and also for pedestrians, so speed reduction should be in there. Nothing about demand management and finding ways to reduce the number of vehicles. We need to reduce traffic to have the desired effect. The planning system comes into it, but I think something we need to embrace is the idea of car-free developments, building houses with no parking spaces whatsoever, so people choose other forms of transport. And I could go on about a number of other things that I think should be in the report, but basically in short, I do think if it's going to have the desired effect, the strategy does need to be much bolder.
Thanks, Jeff. Hopefully managed to get all those points down there. You're quite right, the details of any schemes will come forward with the implementation. So it's certainly not something that we've tried to avoid. It is something we are working on. We do have many a list of schemes that we'd like to progress, but terms of sustainable travel along the same basis, so that we know that we're going to get best value for money, best bang for our buck type of thing. In terms of economic growth versus air quality, good point. Again, in terms of this particular strategy, the good thing is that we can say is that not only do we have this strategy, we'll hopefully have a clean air strategy as well that will pick up on council's point about clean air and air quality. Those two will work hand in glove, and I don't think we will be sacrificing economic growth or air quality in this particular regard. One or the other. Hopefully we can do it together. Because the whole point about this is the seamless journey from end to end. We want to make better, we want to achieve economic growth whilst achieving improvements in air quality. So hopefully we can do that. Speed reduction, you're quite right, we don't focus on that in this strategy, but we do have a road safety strategy that has been approved by the design authority. And if you care to go through that or contact us at step, we can explain to you what we're doing across the city region in terms of speed reduction. Demand management, again, this strategy doesn't focus on that. It is something that we're all conscious of and that we need to start considering. It is a very contentious issue for anybody who has considered things such as congestion charging and so on. It is one of the most contentious things around. People will be aware what happened in Manchester when that was even attempted. So it is a difficult thing to do, but we shouldn't shy away from that, and we do have to look at that. And TAG, as a wider group, is more than happy to take that on board. In terms of car-free developments, I did mention earlier on about the LCRCA things. One of the things that we will do through this particular strategy is work with developers to hopefully come up with new developments, new housing developments that encourage cycling and walking and certainly make access to public transport easier. One of my particular personal beliefs is that the type of development we approve these days simply doesn't even allow public transport access into them because of the layouts that we adopt. So I've got a personal belief about that. Two councillors from Foulkes probably recognise, but we do need to work with developers. We do need to get in at what we call pre-application stage, that before the formal planning act comes in, and actually make sure that they can deliver what we want rather than what they want to reduce their costs. I think, have I missed anything?
I don't think so. I was also going to mention
not to do with draft document, but maybe a paragraph on the clean and the number of questions that's come through and raised the profile. And it always will where you've got transport and cycling, walking, which is kind of predominant in this report. And also we would need something on clean intention to make sure it continues. But the other point I wanted to raise was about electric cars and where we're going in the future. Some of the developers now are moving towards the next generation of cars and they will be electric cars. There's nothing in the report we could see whereby electric charging points and various other things will be put in place as part of the transport plan.
Again, in a similar vein to what you said about planning and working with developers, that is something that all districts are now fully conscious of, and we will be really pressing developers to do that. But it's not just developers, we have a responsibility ourselves. You know, we as the district have to take the lead on that. You know, if we're seen not to be providing those sorts of facilities, then why should anybody else? So I'm sure as districts you're already working on that, providing them with the likes of stadiums and so on. We have to continue to do that. We have to be at the forefront if others are going to do it as well.
Natalie, then Steve, then Jerry.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks very much for this report. It's a breath of fresh air, if I might say. I just want to commend committee for the quality and diversity indication. There's many times you see there 2 lines and it doesn't go in depth enough looking at the equality and diversity implications. So just to put on record that really proud, really happy to see that consideration has been taken in terms of that, and hope that all the other reports that come in terms of to this committee in terms of equality and diversity consideration is taken to that. Thank you.
Yeah, if I can just follow up on that, because that's really, really important. Can we, Suzanne Cady wrote the report, wasn't it? Can we give her a big pat on the back? Because what she regularly kind of delivers is exemplary style kind of approaches to equality and diversity implications in her reports. Can we make sure it's in the minutes that we expect anyone who's writing a report to actually have a look at what Suzanne does and make sure that's properly reflected in exactly the same way. We take that message back to everyone. It's all of our responsibilities to make sure that's reflected in future reports.
Sure, should appreciate that too. Thanks.
Steve?
Yeah. This is really a good report, but at the end of it all, it's all about the thing that we have to change in people's behaviour, and it's long entrenched behaviour people have. And my bugbear around this is the school trip. You often see very short journeys being taken, children to school, and that is almost setting the trend for that child for the rest of its life, because it expects to go with a short journey in a car, or some other, not by walking or cycling, whatever. So I think the emphasis should be about behavioural change at the earliest stage for our citizens, because it is a long-term strategy. It's not going to happen overnight. So that would be my plea, that we concentrate on that, because we've all just been through that phase, haven't we? We've all been going to work when the schools are on holiday, roads are quiet. As soon as schools are back in, so there's far too many vehicles on the roads during school time, and most people are doing a short run, which I think is something we should concentrate on. And the economic growth issue is, the will on occasions. I mean, I would have hoped in 2022 we'd have been full of extra vehicles with extra emissions for the Commonwealth Games, but it doesn't look as though that is going to happen. There's those sort of balances you will always have to have. And I heard Councillor Crone speaking with extreme negativity about the Commonwealth Games only yesterday. Well, perhaps he got his wish there. The Commonwealth Games doesn't look like it's going to come to Liverpool, but that sometimes has to be a compromise about growth. And the other thing that I've always had an issue with, we've also got to get the message across to the general public that whilst they're seeing a cycle lane being built, with all good credit for that, sometimes they're often built alongside a road that's full of potholes, and the general public can't make that transition in their own mind. Why you've got money for, or why you're spending money on a cycle lane, but you're not doing some of the basics on the infrastructure that we know and love. So there's lots of compromises, lots of difficulties going on, but I would suggest that we start at the base level, and that's that journey to school, which seems to flood the roads exponentially during the periods.
I mean, it's a very good point. I mean, your officers are well aware of this. It's a challenge we've faced for years. Carol and I often speak about how difficult it is to change people's behaviours. To be honest, I think that's probably why cycling and walking, I wouldn't say it's been kicked into the long grass, but it's not progressed as rapidly as some of the other more developments, simply because the challenge of changing people's behaviours is more difficult than perhaps building some new infrastructure. And hopefully through this strategy, but also through the road safety strategy, we will begin to look more closely at how we can change these behaviours. Road safety strategy. I mean, one shame, for example, is, if you remember, it wasn't until a few years ago that we all had school travel plan officers, but the funding for that was taken away. And I personally, I think that was a real shame. My own district, we managed to get a travel plan in every school. But since those officers have gone, unfortunately, probably most of them are now just sat on the shelf somewhere, which I think is a real shame. And if we can begin to address that problem, push for funding perhaps that might well resurrect those officers, then that would be a great thing. But it will undoubtedly be a challenge.
Got Jerry and then Ken. Oh, Ken.
Thanks, Chairman. Thanks for the department. The thing is, it's extremely laudable. You know, in Halton, I mean, when we had the new towns in Halton, we had it also in what is now Stockbridge Village, used to be Council Farm. It was pedestrian only, and it cost the council millions of pounds because the people wouldn't accept it. I mean, people's aspirations, unfortunately, is to get a job, earn enough money and buy a car if you want to grow. It's all laudable saying you should do this, you should do this, but you know, it does cost the councils an awful lot of money to sort of, as you were saying about putting things in the planning applications, how they should plan these areas. I mean, hopefully Scrubcone's experienced it, Knowsley's experienced it, but you know, the consultation speaks to the people and see if the people want it. You know, it's all well having committees, but if the people aren't engaged, it won't work.
Yeah, of course you can, Carol.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think it's important that to understand that you can't do things to people. That's what I was saying about sounding like we want to change anything. It's not about that. The important thing that maybe I haven't come across that much in this strategy is we've spoke a bit about walking and cycling because there is no home for that at a strategic level at the moment. But this is a local journey strategy and it's about short journeys, and some of those are by bus, some of those are by other forms, and so it's twofold. It's trying to put the walking and cycling in place, but for me, certainly currently cycling levels around 1%, something like that. Not that, even though it has increased, it's still not that much. And it may be that we have to look at the fact that it won't ever increase much beyond 5%, something depending on what conditions are. But you're right, if people will vote with their feet or with their car or whatever, the people will do what they think is right for them. So what this strategy is about is also a Liverpool City Region strategy. It's not a Merseytravel strategy, it's not a district strategy for anyone around this table. And if you read it, it's actually most of the activity cannot be delivered by the transport theme. And that's what the exciting opportunity is for me with the Mayor, because the Mayor does sit across all the themes now, and we do have an opportunity to say these things need to happen, but actually, can you, Mr. Mayor and others, take them and make them happen in other themes? Because without that, we won't get very far, and that's why I think some of the issues that people mentioned around some specifics that aren't in here, some of the specifics that we do want are not within our gift. So when this delivery programme that we're going to have to develop is going to be quite challenging, because we are not going to sit around and think about what we think is the right answer. We're going to have to work with colleagues in other themes and think what is possible. And you're quite right, you know, if you build a housing development where you can't park your car, maybe some people won't buy houses there. So it's not about doing it to people or even doing it with people, it's putting it in, creating the conditions so people can choose it if it fits for them. Because some people might not want to ever cycle, some people might be able, and some of the things you talked about. Some of it might be about scooters and stuff like that, but it's not mentioned at the moment, people are not able to get around. But it's more about us taking this to other themes to create the conditions where those shorter journeys aren't by car. So that's what we're trying to do here. And as Nick has talked about the walking cycle, because it is integral, but it's not got a strategic home at the moment. And that's what this is about. So it's about people in this room and others helping us to take this into other themes to make it happen, as opposed to trying to get the money to do it to people that go.
Gordon and then Harry.
Thank you, and that just about covered the whole area that I was coming on to, because it is about that, from what the Metro Rail is saying about the silo and understanding all the things. This is the outline, the strategy, and I'm sure all the details can be filled in, because as we've had the conversation, you know that a lot of young mothers may not be aware of the fact that the little toddler in the push here, that toddler is the most exposed pedestrian there is to all the toxins in the air. The pollutants in the air, again, exactly at that level, not the adults that are smaller. What is the cost then? So when you represent an area that has high levels of deprivation, poor health, a lot of traffic, you then get into respiratory morbidity problems that hold back people from getting a good education, because there's so much being done for the medication to deal with asthma and those other problems that are taken away. What is the health cost that contributes to let that go? We then get vehicles that before they've travelled a certain distance, the catalyst converters, they're not effective. This isn't the detail that's wanted in this at the moment. It's to start to get those people with the expertise talking together about how we do that. And that was very pressing about the schools. I mean, that issue has got worse and worse over the decades. And what will happen in general terms for business, because it's not just protection, it's a business protection. What will happen is business will find it harder. They've already got several billions of pounds listed with an economic deficit to the nation because of traffic jams, logistically trying to move things around. People will move away from areas where it's congestion. We've got the Mayor of London looking at how we can grab all the sort of cars up to the hill, if you can do those things. I think it's a great thing to be able to get at least a recognition that there's far more than just the transport side. Thanks very much.
That's good. Harry?
I just thought it occurs that one of the shortest of local journeys is the journey from the train to the bus, or the bus to the train. And unfortunately, on most occasions, people don't do that because we haven't yet found a way of matching the two transport systems. So maybe that's something that needs looking as part of the strategy. Councillor McGuffin referred to Halton, and yes, Mick will know from a professional level far better than I. Runcorn New Town was designed to ensure that if you used a car, you had to go the long way around, and etc. And it hasn't worked. It's as simple as that. It just hasn't worked. And I must say, Councillor Crone, I'm amused at this idea of this 4 or 5 bedroom house executive estate being built with no car parking facilities. I don't think they sell many bloody houses. Sorry. I don't think they sell many houses in that situation. Unless, of course, people think, well, it's all right for those in the affordable homes. They don't need a car. We have a major problem in our area, and I suspect all over the country, that the people who live in the most difficult economic circumstances, who maybe can't even afford a car, don't mind a green car, also tend to live in an area where there's no public transport either. So it isn't a case of them not making short trips in a car, it's how they make any journeys at all. I suppose what I'm trying to say, Mick, is I'm glad I'm not the one who's responsible for putting this together. I'm sure you'll succeed, but boy, it's a challenge. Thank you, Chair.
In terms of collective responsibility, we're all responsible. Is there any further, John?
Just a very quick one from me. Thanks very much for your presentation, Nick. It was excellent. Just to let you know that councillors Philbin, Howard and Stockton will be implementing this policy immediately after this meeting. We're going to walk to the train station.
I'm going to make a suggestion because I think this is excellent as a first step in the journey, as you said, Nick. And actually the kind of debate and discussion we've had here has aroused a lot of passions and a lot of really good ideas. And because we like strategies here, but we don't like strategies that sit on shelves and do nothing, and we can point at what we've done with the rail strategy, the bus strategy, the ferry strategy, the freight strategy, and how all those segments actually start to be delivered on. Where the power of this will come is in that delivery plan. And obviously we've got to pull that implementation plan together. So I'm going to suggest that we have a proper detailed workshop session in the next couple of months, where all of us as members actually can get our heads into the detail of this and start influencing what that delivery plan should look like. Because it all sounds great, but let's make sure we start looking at how, in detail, we actually kind of put it into practice. Because what this boils down to, I don't believe there's a trade-off between economic growth and actually more sustainable transport. Because what I think it boils down to is frankly quality of life. You know, that it's not nice living next to a dual carriageway that's stuffed up with cars. People actually want to live in an environment that kind of feels much more kind of communal in its sense. And actually by doing that means people kind of get out more and have more opportunities that come with all of that. So I don't believe there's a trade-off, but I do think it's incumbent on all of us to actually start putting the meat on the bones of this and making sure that in the next few years we can point to stuff and say that's where we started to make a difference. Because changing public opinion and public attitudes, and particularly public behaviour, is a challenge. But you know what? We've done that here. Yeah, we can look at what we've done and got more people onto buses. We've changed people's behaviour. We can look at what we've done about how we've reduced crime and antisocial behaviour on the transport network. We have changed people's people's behaviour, and for the more positive and the better. And that's before you look at many other things in kind of society about how you can actually influence things and get things better for people by actually putting something in place that's an improvement that people prefer to do instead. So that's the clarion call. Let's pull something together and then let's actually kind of run with it and make it happen. Is all of that with paragraph 2 agreed? Marvellous. Okay then, last few